All right, so Socrates, sorry, this is 101, week 5, part 9. Um, Socrates is here going to get into some stuff that sounds a lot like astrology because he talks about how you remember the soul is sort of flying around the heavens before it's sort of and that the good horse is trying to pull it up to see all that beauty, truth, and goodness, and the bad horse is trying to pull it down towards sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And he's talking about how you get glimpses of things and you travel with the gods, and the gods can see different things and different gods see different stuff. And he's going to get into something like astrology, and this is a little bit silly, but I actually kind of don't hate this part. So he talks about how, right, the horse kind of gets dragged down, forgetfulness and vice, that's bad behavior, and not knowing what's important, and her wings fall from her and she drops to the ground. And then the law ordains that this soul shall at her first birth pass not into an animal but into a man. So the idea is that if you get to see some of this beauty, truth, and goodness, your soul kind of lands in you a person. And Socrates has this idea that the person which you are in life depends on how much truth your soul got to see when it was flying around with the gods. That's interesting. It's a little silly. It's a little like astrology, but it's worth some. There's something interesting that happens. Just let's see really quick. So he says, the soul which has seen the most of truth shall come to birth as a philosopher or artist or some musical and loving nature. That which has seen the truth in the second degree, meaning a lot but not as much, shall be a righteous king or warrior chief. A soul which is the third class shall be a politician or economist or trader. The fourth shall be a lover of gymnastic toils or a physician. The fifth shall lead the life of a prophet. The sixth, the character of a poet or some imitative artist will be assigned. The seventh, an artisan, meaning like somebody who makes like pots and pans and that kind of thing. The eighth, that of a sophist or demagogue. A sophist is someone who tricks people with language, like Lysias. A demagogue is like a very bad leader. Um, and the and the ninth, that of a tyrant. Um, and he's basically lists off the different kinds of souls. Now, what's interesting, now obviously I don't believe in this kind of astrology shit. I don't really think like, there's your soul isn't pre-pro. Socrates makes it sound like your soul was flying around before it entered your body and got kind of pre-programmed by how much truth, beauty, and goodness that it saw. And if it saw lots and lots of truth, beauty, and goodness, then it becomes a philosopher. And if it saw no truth, beauty, and goodness, it becomes like Hitler. And then everybody in between, depending on how much beauty, truth, and goodness it saw, it kind of becomes different kinds of professions or jobs. That's a little bit silly. But what is not silly, and is I think worth thinking about, is what Plato has done here, is he's made a list of employment. It's a list of jobs you can do, and he's ranked them from the ones that are most valuable to the ones that are least valuable. So most valuable, he thinks, are philosophers and musicians. Next up, he says, are warriors, warrior kings, like good kings and warrior chiefs. But next up, he says, are sort of regular politicians or people who trade, buy and sell stuff for money. And then after that is athletes. And then after that is prophets. And then after that is poets. And then after that is people who make like pots and pans. And then after that is people who trick you or bad leaders. And then after that is tyrants, who are the worst leaders of all. I think it's really important to do this, and I'm going to recommend you do this. This would be a great discussion board comment to make. Make a list of 10 professions, 10 jobs. At the top of the list, start with the things you would most want to do, and then in the middle, put things you sort of want to do, and towards the end, the things that you would hate to do. It's interesting. Plato has ranked these jobs, because how do you decide what are good jobs to have versus bad jobs to have? Well, notice what Plato did. Plato's a philosopher, so guess which job he thinks is the most important in the whole world? Philosopher. Of course he said that. Nobody would say that but Plato. I might say that. The point here is that when you make a list of jobs, how do you decide what goes in what order? Well, it depends on what you value. Plato values beauty, truth, and goodness. And he says the more you have of it, sort of the closer you are to being a philosopher. And the less you have of it, the closer you are to being like Hitler. So Um, make a list. Make a list of jobs like that, and then ask yourself, why is the list in the order that it's in? So don't just make the list, but think about why you made the list the way it does, because it tells you what you value as a human being. If you make this list, you will discover what is it that you really believe in and think is important in life, and what is not important in life. So, for example, a lot of my students will put jobs that make a lot of money towards the top of the list and jobs that don't make a lot of money towards the bottom of the list. If you do that, you can be like, oh, money is very important to you. That's what you care about the most in the world is money. Um, and Plato cares about beauty, truth, and goodness. Make a list like this. Just make it quick. Don't think too hard about what jobs you think are important or not important. Make a list of what kinds of things and it'll tell you what you value. And I realize this is, horses and wings and chariots and the gods and all of this soul stuff, but like, thinking about your values, about what you value and why, and what kinds of employment you think is valuable and not valuable and why, I think that's really interesting, because it'll tell you, discussing your values, why you hold them, what they are, that's the kind of thing you want to focus on in this class. What do you care about and why? Because you have an opinion, you back it up with reasons, you have examples of different kinds of employment. This is the kind of thing you would do in a class like this, is to think about not just, hey, here's a bunch of cool jobs I could get, but why these jobs? What's the logic? What's the philosophy behind your choices? If you can do that, then you're thinking about what do you value, and you're getting to know yourself. And what did Socrates say was the most important thing? Know yourself. Because that's philosophy kind of knowledge, just thinking about what matters and what doesn't matter and what's important and what's not important. So it's a good discussion board thing. I'd recommend that you do that. Okay, I'm so cold. Why didn't I bring a jacket? I am stupid. I think of myself as a smart person, and then I came out here dressed in a t-shirt. No one else is wearing a t-shirt. I left the house in a hurry. It was sunnier. It was sunnier when I started this video series. Okay, I'm so fucking cold. Okay, let's try it. Let's keep going. I'm suffering to teach you. Okay, let's take a look what we got here. We're getting more mythology bullshit. We're going to race right past this. 10,000 years must elapse before the soul of each one can return to the place from whence she came, for she cannot grow her wings unless. So this is reincarnation stuff. Only the soul of the philosopher, guileless, meaning you never trick people, and true, or the soul of a lover, who is not devoid of philosophy. So you can love people, but with philosophy. And we'll talk about what that looks like soon. May acquire wings in the third of the recurring period of 1,000 years. He is distinguished from the ordinary good man who gains wings in 3,000 years, and they who choose this life 3 times in succession have wings given to them and go. I don't care about this at all. But the others receive judgment when they have completed their first life, and after the judgment they go, some of them to the houses of correction, which are under the earth and punished, and other to some place in heaven, whither they are lightly borne by justice, and they live. Okay, I'm kind of skipping this. Socrates is imagining a system of reincarnation, and the idea is that you get multiple chances to have different kinds of lives and different kind of jobs. And if you spend your time, and the idea is just the more time you spend with beauty, truth, and goodness, the mental things Socrates thinks you should be paying attention to, then the more your soul grows wings and the more it can escape this earthly world and join the gods. The way I would put it is the more time you spend thinking about these kind of philosophical subjects, the more your mind grows and the better your life is going to be. Because people who ignore this stuff, I think, often feel unfulfilled and unhappy for reasons that they can't even explain. And that's one of the things we do in this class, is to kind of think about bigger philosophy stuff. Okay, we'll pick it up in the next video. All right, good job. Let me get this kind of untangled here. Thank you for sticking with this if you've gotten this far. Maybe many people will not, but if you're doing this, I'm very, very pleased.